So we've taken this time and this space to just share with you why our Latinos here within the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission are committed to the fight for social justice. So, on behalf of Executive Director, I welcome each and every one of you. And I also like to share that this Sunday ends the month long celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. And we've had the fortunate honor of having Maria Hinojosa join us and share her story, which was quite a treat for each of us to be able to take in. But now this is even more special to me because it's our colleagues, right? It's people that we work alongside each day. And so I thank each and every one of you for being timely. I know that we are all pretty busy, but it's good to just pause, right, and get to know our colleagues. Okay. And so I want to start by saying thank you. Welcome to each and every one of you. Oh, and also Taiwan Martinez, who is an HRR3. She's a team lead supervisor out of our Philadelphia regional office. She won't be able to join us today, so I will be reading her narrative. All right. So once I get on and I read her narrative, I'm just going to reiterate that this is her story. Okay. But I just wanted to let you know first and foremost. And now it is my honor to welcome Dr. Raquel Yiengst, who is our commissioner here. She's one of our commissioners. She's actually a co chair of the commission, if I'm right. And Dr. Raquel Yiengst will share her passion, her story, and why she's dedicated her life to social justice. So without further ado, Dr. Yanks, was it just me or did she disappear?
No, she was just there, and then
Okay.
she was here because we were talking with her, and then I saw her picture pop up, and then it went away.
Disappeared.
Great.
Dr.
Well,
Yanks, can you hear us?
we will try to reach back out to her, but we will go ahead and move along. I am going to share with you, I'll just get started and I'll share with you why I have been committed to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission now for 2 years and for this fight for social justice. I was raised by two Puerto Rican parents. My parents came to the United States in the 70s. They were young teenagers, but they decided to come over here because of opportunities that were presented to them. Had a family and raised us in a household where our culture was first and at the front lines of pride. You are proud of the language that you speak. You are also proud of where you come from, regardless of what you look like. And so my parents had salsa music playing in the background regularly every day. My father spoke both Spanish and English fluently. My mother spoke Spanish only. It was when she came to the United States after my sisters and I became of age, if you would, around that 12 years old when girls start to, we know for the women on here, when we start to develop, that she said, I'm going to take English as a second language. And she did. She did. I remember her working full time, but also going to school for English as a second language. And she learned the language. Now she has a very thick accent, but she will have a conversation with someone who doesn't speak Spanish if need be, which taught me a little something about being fearless, even when you have what would be considered something different, let's just say, right? And so my parents raised us to be very proud of where we came from. I visited Puerto Rico quite often as a child. I still have parents that live there, and I come from a coastal part of the island, which is super beautiful. I just visited not too long ago and was quite surprised that it looked like guys, the red light district. If you visit Puerto Rico at night, and you're in a coastal town and there are red lights, do not be alarmed. Those are for little hatchlings, sea turtles. Because there's such a large quantity of them, the hatchlings tend to go out into the road. And so marine biologists and other specialists decided we have to protect these hatchlings. We have to protect the sea turtles. How do we do that? Well, we do that by having the street lights no longer be as bright, regular lights, but we switch them to a red or blue light to keep the hatchlings from getting into a place where they could, potentially something could happen to them, right? And so that's my story. I came to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission because of the mission of this agency. I think that Puerto Ricans, even though we are a mestizo, which is a beautiful blend of cultures, we do experience racism and colorism. That is very real. There is a part of the island that is very rich in Black, Taino, people that are Puerto Rican, but they are black. And I remember the story of now in Puerto Rico, Loíza and Piñones, they are just outside of San Juan. So if you're ever in Puerto Rico and you ever visit the San Juan area and you see signs for Loíza and Piñones, drive by there if you have a chance. You will marvel at all the black people and how they have kept that culture alive through the Bombay Plena fishing for local crabs and fishes and their little kioscos is what we call them, but eateries are amazing. And so this lady was born in the 40s, Adolfina Villanueva Osorios. Adolfina had 6 children. She lived with her husband in Luisa, and the Catholic Church wanted her property, beachside property, I must say. In 1980, she would not move from her home. So in 1980, the Puerto Rican police, stormed through the beach up to her property and shot the family. They killed Alufina Osorios over her property. Now, to this day, the plot is still vacant because no one was ever prosecuted for her death, unfortunately. And the family did not give up the property. So what happens is the police came, they had builders come, and the community would then, and whenever the developers started to build, the community was in an uproar and they would take all of the materials so that the builders can build on the property. To this day, the land is still vacant. And Alberfina Osorios Villanueva still lives on as someone who stood for the rights of, not just housing, but for the rights of people of color within the island or Afro Latino community. And so, right in line with the work that we do here at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, it's my responsibility to ensure that people are treated with dignity. And so that is why I'm here. That is why I feel dedicated to this calling because regardless if you are handicapped or disabled, if you are a person of color, if you are a person of a specific religion, if you choose to love a person of the same sex, that is your right. You should still be treated with dignity and with respect. And that is why I'm here. So that's just a little bit of, why I have been called to do this work. And I'm humbled and so honored to be alongside each and every one of you doing this hard work every day because it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. So there's my 10 minutes. I will pass this on to Dr. Raquel Yiengst, who I see is back. Commissioner Yanks, we're having difficulties hearing you, Dr. Yanks.
and seeing you.
So while I'm going to call her offline, and while we wait for her connection to get better here, how about I pass it along to you, Director of Fair Housing,
Okay,
Garcia?
thank you. Good morning. Buenos dias. This is one time that I get away with saying something in Spanish and nobody looks at me like I'm weird.
Buenos dias.
But thank you for this opportunity. When this opportunity came up, it did take my mind many places. Because when we talk about justice, I mean, I go right to one of my childhood heroes, Dr. Albizu Campos, who once said that when something to the effect that when tyranny is law, revolution is order. And it, that you cannot be unapologetically Puerto Riqueño if you are not in that frame of justice. And I'll tell you what I mean. When you look at the history of Puerto Rico, even from the very beginning, there's been an injustice that has occurred through that island. I know that the stories and the history will have you believe that it was a peaceful takeover, but it wasn't. It was an invasion. That's what the history tells us. When you take over a people that have their own monetary, they have their own constitution, and they have everything they need to be self-sufficient, and a seat at Parliament in Spain, and then because of the spoils of war, someone takes you over. And that happens, right? The weak get conquered. But it's the continuing abuse after the fact. The elimination of the Taino people, the sterilization of our Puerto Rican women in the 30s, which was, again, all you have to do is read the history books and it puts it out there. And so I'm a bit of a history buff, especially when it comes to Puerto Rico. And so when I look at that, and I see what goes on now, we still are going through it. We have an outside entity, or not an outside entity, but a colonial entity overseeing the finances of Puerto Rico because apparently Puerto Rico doesn't know how to run its own finances. Um, and so these things, you know, they get in your mind. And when somebody says, well, tell us about your narrative, I can tell you that I grew up in Puerto Rico with my grandmother. It was a rough divorce between my father and my mother. Father could be quite abusive, and so him being abusive. Well, obviously, if you're abused, there's only two ways to go. You either escape or you become abusive yourself. And so I'm removed from my mother's care and now into my grandmother's care. And I want to share something with you. Give me 1 second while I do this. See if I can do this. But I want to share with you. Here we go. Kind of give you an illustration. See if I can find it. Maybe not. I was going to share. I was going to share something with you, but I can't share the content. I grew up in a house. It was I don't know if anybody knows what T111 boards are, but in Puerto Rico that was very popular for construction. Very thin board. It's tongue and groove. And I grew up in a wooden house with my grandmother. 4 walls. My bed was a small cot in the kitchen. No running water inside the house. Uh, there was a gas stove, but it was more like a hot plate. To The water came in from a spigot outside, and that didn't get any better because then when I moved with my father, it was again wooden house. You could see the outside. You could see the outside of the house. It was tin roof, um, but 7 people living in a house that had 2 rooms. Um, Big living room, 2 kind of bedrooms, and the attached kitchen was kind of like an add-on, and it was more of an outside cooking area, and you cooked on bricks. Uh, My job was to go out and collect firewood. Uh, Imagine this is the 80s. I'm 13, 14 years old. I'm cutting wood. That was one of my jobs. The other job was to collect water. So I would go to the public spigot, which is about I'd say half a city block, and 5-gallon buckets, and you fill them up. And I would have to fill up 8 of them. So I would take them in a cart, fill them up, bring them back. That was my job. Um, and so I remember my stepmother, Angie, who I think was the closest thing to a real mother I ever had, uh, said to me once, "Well, Adrian, the nasty truth about Puerto Rico is if you don't work, you don't eat." Right? And so I started doing odd jobs. And one of my first jobs that I did at 15 was I went with my friends to the major grocer. It was like a giant, right? But it was called El Grande, right? And I would go there and stand in line with all my friends and wait for my turn to go in and pack groceries, put them in the cart, and then help the consumer go to the car, and then I would just get tips. That was my first job. I get tips. Some days I made out well, some days I didn't. It depended on how hard I worked, how friendly I was, how conversational I was, how careful I was with the eggs and making sure that I didn't squish the bread and all that good stuff. That was one of my first jobs. And then picking up another odd job at the age of 15, we have elephant grass in this part of the region. So when I was living with my grandmother, we were in the southeast portion of the island in a town called Yabucoa. Okay, it's a coastal town. And then when I'm living with my father, I'm living in the north center part of the island, which is Arecibo, and it's the second largest city in Puerto Rico, municipality in Puerto Rico. And so there, um, is where I had to chop wood and collect the water. And the other odd job that I had was cutting elephant grass. So if it rained a lot, obviously the growth is quick, and so you would go the next day and line up to be chosen to cut elephant grass. And so there I am with my machete. I'm ready to roll, and I've got this what we call a garabato, which is a branch that you take from a tree and you fashion it so that it can be a puller of the elephant grass as you chop the very bottom. And so that's what I would do. I would chop it and roll it up, take it to the truck, and then we would go somewhere else and we would plant it. And they'd give us $20 a day for that work. Uh, so you kind of begin to get a sense for especially if you're me and you have this affinity with history, you begin to say, well, if we're so important to the colony, why are we so poor? If we're so important to the colony, or if we're so important as a colony, why is it that when people want to ship something to Puerto Rico from anywhere in the world, you have to stop the ship at a certain place, you have to unload that ship, put it in another ship so that it could go into the port in Puerto Rico? These little things, they're injustices that occur every single day, and we learn to live with those, I guess. Once you get treated a certain way, it becomes habit forming, and you get used to it. And that's what I think is important for people not to know. I mean, to people to know. I mean, it's one of those things where if we're that important, why are we so poor? How poor were we? I'll tell you how poor. I would go to bed many times sucking on a tangerine. No dinner, 7 people living with my mother-in-law. She did the very best she could, but sacrifices had to be made, you know. And so any poverty that goes on, I would say, not to be blameful, but it has a historic pattern. It's like when I start talking about redlining and I start being able to attach the impacts of today to redlining, I can do the same thing to the people that are my people in Puerto Rico. And so when you grow up with this angst, you always look for a way, how can I make a difference? Right? Even when I worked at Advanced Auto Parts, I always said, how can I make a difference? Not just for my people, Puerto Riqueño, but all Latinos, all African Americans, anyone that I can help. So at Advanced Auto Parts, we put together there's an organization called the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC. It's one of the oldest Hispanic civil rights agencies in the country. It's kind of like the sister agency of the NAACP. And so under LULAC, I proposed a scholarship fund in Memphis. It was a key place for us. There were about 300,000 Mexican nationals that lived in Memphis, many of them poor, many of them experiencing a lot of discrimination in employment. And so what we did was we put this scholarship together so that children can go to college and that might not have otherwise been able to go. And I did this not only in Memphis, but in Austin, and I did this in San Antonio, all in an effort to help as much as I could, because it's important that we prepare our children as much as possible for this competitive world, for this world that tends to lean into the injustice a little bit more than it should. I remember saying at one of the trainings, the reason we have these rules, the reason we have these laws is because as human beings, unfortunately, we don't know how to treat each other. And until we learn how to treat each other, these laws are going to be absolutely necessary. It is necessary for our own survival so we don't tear each other apart. And so that's what drives me is how do I keep from having people tear each other apart? Well, we educate, we stimulate conversation, we collaborate on issues, we partner up as much as possible. You always hear me talking about partnership. It comes from a place of, survival. If we are to survive, regardless of where we come from, and I too, one of the things that I love is that I embrace every part of my uh, unapologetically Puerto Rican persona. I love my African roots. I think that it's important to bring those to the forefront in my music. I feature a lot because I'm a musician. For those of you that don't know, I feature a lot of Afro rhythms. I mean, almost exclusively Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Cuban, African, Mozambique. Um, the 6/8. Not to get into all the musical technical jargon, but I feature a lot of that because it's important. It's part of who I am. And then obviously you embrace your Spanish heritage, the language, the culture, the Moorish influence in our own culture. People don't know this, but there are a lot of Moorish influence in the everyday speaking of the Puerto Rican language of Spanish in Puerto Rico. When we say something, when we say God willing, we say ojalá. Well, that's Moorish. It's oh Allah. And these things are intertwined within our culture. That's why for me, discrimination, just in the very broadest sense, and not to be ignorant about it, but it doesn't make sense because I live with these three identities every day. And it is a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you
And we'll
so much
toss
for
it off
sharing
over
that.
to, yeah, toss it over to Dr. Yiengst. She's still here?
I know
Yeah,
that.
wait, she's
Yes,
coming back.
go ahead.
Uh, Okay.
We can hear you, Commissioner Yanks. Commissioner Yanks. Okay. So while we wait for Commissioner Yanks and her connectivity to get right online with us, we will move on to Supervisor Martinez. Now, those of you who aren't familiar with Supervisor Martinez, she is originally from Venezuela. I am going to share her narrative. Please bear with me. It is quite personal and emotional, but here it goes. What drove me to fight for social justice? I cannot tell you what drove me to fight for social justice without first sharing with you a few aspects of my life. I never planned or wanted to come to the United States. But one day, after a couple of friends who wanted to come here teased me with, quote, "You don't dare move to the United States," end quote, I went with them to the US Embassy in Caracas, applied for a US visa, and got it. Unfortunately, my friends did not. I took it as an omen, and in June of 1990, I left my home with $900, a suitcase with a few pieces of clothes, tons of incertitude, and the pain of leaving my loved ones behind. I did not know what awaited me here. The only thing I knew was that I was going, and she puts in quote, Pal Norte, end quote. Pal Norte is up north for you non Spanish speaking folks. That a friend of mine got me a seat on a military plane from Caracas to Miami, and that hours later, a friend of my mother was picking me up at the Philadelphia Greyhound bus station. Yes, I made the journey from Miami to Philadelphia by bus. And because everything was new to me, it was not too bad. From day one, I've witnessed and suffered discrimination. I vividly remember my first national origin discrimination encounter in Washington, D.C., when I was attacked for my broken English. Today, I'm still thanking God and the universe for the Puerto Rican man who came out of nowhere in my defense. I should have taken it as a premonition of the mainstream culture of racism and discrimination in the United States, but I did not because racism and discrimination were foreign to me. I've been residing in the United States for 33 years, first as a tourist, then as a permanent resident, and from October 30th, 1997, as a U.S. citizen. In those 33 years, I've been a recipient and a witness to many other incidents of discrimination and hatred. I've been called wetback, yellow, and spick, but because of my lack of knowledge and idiomatic expressions and national origin discrimination, I did not get upset because I did not know the meaning of such expressions. For me, I'm sorry, guys. For me, wetback was espalda mojada, but my back was not wet. So why was I being called wetback? Later, I learned that wetback is a pejorative, pejorative towards immigrants from the South, a derogatory term for those who've dared to cross the Rio Grande in search of a better life in the USA for them, their families, and their communities. It was the same with being called yellow. I'm not yellow. I'm a beautiful café con leche, as my father used to call me. For me, yellow is a color, a beautiful, bright color, the color of the sun, the color of life, because without the sun, there is no life. And for spit, well, I searched for the etymology of the word as it did not make sense to me. I knew it was an insult, but where did it come from? What is its meaning? So I found out that it was a protestation. No speak English, used by Northern English speakers in reference to Mexicans and also to Panamanians during the construction of the canal. Curiously, the term is not used to insult non English speakers from the Eastern Europe. Today, when I heard spick, I just feel sorry for enormous display of ignorance of the monolingual person trying to insult me because I'm smart enough to know two languages and brave enough to do my job in my second language. I've been followed in stores and I've seen young African Americans been taken into custody from the same stores. Shortly after September 11th, my employment with a powerful religious organization was terminated because, quote, you are not a real American, end quote. I've been seated in the last table in a restaurant because my Latino friends and I talk too loud. And I've been mocked, ridiculed, disrespected, and more than once I found myself speaking to a thick and impenetrable wall of Anglophones who refused to listen to me simply because of my accent. All the above inspired and continues to inspire me to fight for social justice. The fight never ends. Also, in those 33 years, I graduated magna cum laude from Temple University with a BA in History and Literature, followed by an MA in Literature and Spanish Linguistics, also from Temple University. And in 2014, I earned a MS in Educational Leadership from St. Joseph's University. When I first saw the posting for Human Relations Representative, I thought, wow, it would be great to work there, a place free of discrimination, a place where I would be treated with respect, and where I would be able to fight discrimination by using a legal structure created for that purpose. It has been a roller coaster, and justice is elusive, but I love my job. I love my team. I love what we do in PHRC, and I'm tremendously satisfied when, after investigating a case, we've been able to deliver justice to the aggravated constituent. Here at PHRC, we have our shortcomings, but I really do my best to honor the mission of PHRC. Hence, my latest crusade of bringing awareness to my PHRC colleagues about cultural and linguistic differences and bias and language discrimination. I'm optimistic that under the leadership of PHRC Executive Director Chad D. Lassiter, training and workshops addressing cultural differences and linguistic bias and discrimination will become a reality. After all, he listened to me in 2018 when I shared with him my personal experience with sexual harassment, which opened the door for the PHRC's first sexual harassment symposium in 2019. And then she goes on to share her thank you with me, which is personal and I'm not going to get into in this space. But in solidarity, that was our Taiwan Martinez from our Philadelphia regional office. Dr. Commissioner Yanks, are you with us?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's great. Can you see me? The camera is on.
Yeah, we can't see you. Is the cover on?
Yeah, the camera is on, but that doesn't matter. The important thing is if you can hear me. There's
Yep,
nothing
we can
to
hear
look
you.
at here. Is it my turn now?
Yes.
Yes, please. Go
Okay,
ahead,
good
Commissioner.
everybody. And I am so sorry for all the problems with my connection, but when I first started, it looked beautiful, and then all of a sudden, it went to pieces. Anyhow, I am very happy to be with my compatriotas here to speak about our life and our history. And I think many of you have heard many things about me, but I'm going to try to highlight some of the things that have made the person that I am. You know that I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. Fortunately, of a privileged family who was able to afford me an education and send me to the United States to go to college. Um, and while I was in Puerto Rico, I went to private Catholic school, and so you know that my teachings have been based on the Catholic religion, and which it has carried me through my entire life. When I came to the United States, I was a freshman in college. I could not speak a word of English. And so, thank the Lord that I was in an environment where we were all young, we were all pursuing a career, we were able to help each other, we were able to play jokes on each other. And you know that although it was very, very difficult for me because at the beginning my grades went to pot, I was able to get my degree, go back to Puerto Rico, and say, on the airplane, never, ever, ever again would I go back to that country. These people are ignorant, they don't know anything about us, and so I'm coming back to Puerto Rico to make my life here. But the Lord has other things for you, and so a year later, I had met a man from Reading, got married, and came to Reading. Well, that's where my battles really began. I was totally educated. I couldn't get a job. At that time, there were about 400 Puerto Rican people living in Reading that had come here to work in the farms. And so they couldn't speak English, and they came from the lower socioeconomic class in Puerto Rico because you know that Puerto Rico was a caste system at one time. I hope to God that that's not the case now, but it used to be a caste system. And so my first job in Reading, which not too many of you know, was as Berks County home economist for Penn State University because my degree was in home economics. And through that job, I was able to go to all the farms in Reading to work with all the farm ladies and teach them cooking, sewing, upholstering, whatever the case might be. But also, I saw the conditions in which the Puerto Ricans that were working in the farms were living. It was, I mean, even to this day, as I am talking to you, I get goosebumps all through my body. I remember going to a farm where they took me for, oh, well, we gave them a place to live. And I went to the place where they were living, and they were working, the place was empty, and I'm looking through all of the peepholes that I could see, and in one of the peepholes, it must have been a kitchen and a sink, and there were a couple of chickens, which I'm sure was going to be their dinner, covered with flies. I mean, the chickens were black with flies, and they slept on the floor. And I thought, oh God, how can this possibly be? And they used to take their children with them to the fields because they had nobody to take care of their children and so on. And those that could not get lodging in the county were living in the city of Reading. At any rate, that's when I started to see what real discrimination, what real uh, lack of humanity it was all about. Because I thought, why? Why are these people being treated like this? They're human beings like just like anybody else. I'm going to fast track to meeting the superintendent of the Reading School District who asked me to come to work for the Reading School District. And I said, I'm not a teacher, I'm a home economist. I have a job that I love, and there's no need for me to change jobs. However, he was very persistent, and he said something that resonated with me. He said, we need you in the Reading School District. And I thought, well, if they need me in the Reading School District, maybe that's where the Lord wants me to go. So I accepted a position with the Reading School District, which was a position made for me, tailored to me, which was make home visits, do translation, work with parents, work with the community, try to work with some of the children. So that was at the beginning. And the first day on my job, they took me to the special education school, which was the Reading School District was very proud of that. And when I went to the special education school, I expected to see children with in wheelchairs and all kinds of things in their heads and so on. But instead, I saw these perfectly normal children. And then I look at them and they were Latinos. They were Puerto Rican. And I asked the superintendent, why are these children here? And oh, we tested them and, their IQ shows that they are special education. And I asked who tested them. Well, our English psychology. Well, do the children speak English? No. And is the testing in English? Yes. So how, that's when I just could not believe that we were testing these children in a foreign language, because English is a foreign language for Ricans, and putting them in special education where, they were treated totally different. And so that's where my battle began. And I tried to do everything that I could, humanly possible, to educate people in the Reading School District about these children and these people that were here in coming to Berks County. And they kept coming. I saw them coming. And then, something miraculous happened because, I'm a firm believer that the Lord works in a mysterious way and He puts you where you are supposed to be every minute of your day. And that was that 3 policemen, state policemen, came to my house on a Saturday to investigate me. And I was shocked because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Why am I being investigated? But they were investigating me because somebody had nominated me to be a commissioner at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. And so when I didn't know what that was, what it meant or anything, but I can read and write, so I started to do some research. And I saw that this was the agency that deals with discrimination in Pennsylvania. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a perfect opportunity for me to work and help people who cannot help themselves. And so I accepted the position. And the first year, I was scared to death. I didn't know anything about it. I was young and ignorant and so on, but I tried to learn. I tried to read everything that I could. And so I also saw that the Human Relations Commission has an arm that's about equal educational opportunity. And I thought, here we go. These people are the people that are going to help me and work with me to educate children that, are forgotten. So you see why I'm so passionate about the entire Human Relations Commission, what we do, what we stand for. I always was taught from little on that you treat people as human beings. You treat people with dignity. You treat people with respect. You are kind and helpful to anybody that you can, because if you don't do that, something bad is going to happen to you. That was part of the religion training that I received. And so why did I become the victim of people just because uh, I, I guess I was fortunate that everybody said, well, you don't look like a Puerto Rican. But that was not the case. My dead way is my accent, an accent that I have had all my life and I will never lose because I was too old when I learned English. And so it was not where you come from, but what are you, nationality or whatever. Oh, you have an accent. Where do you come from? And then the guessing began. Oh, you're Italian, you're Jewish, you're Greek. No, I'm Puerto Rican. Puerto Rican, but you don't look like a Puerto Rican. What does a Puerto Rican look like? You tell me, what a Puerto Rican look like? You people, we come in all faces, in all colors, in all distinctions. I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend, and I said to them, you could be Italian, you could be French, you could be German, you could be Jewish. If you live in Puerto Rico, you are a Puerto Rican. So in the United States, everybody is labeled by their last name. Oh, they're Jewish. Oh, they're Italian. Oh, they're so on. I I have been the victim of discrimination all my life in the United States. In the Reading School District, people said I had the job because I was Puerto Rican. So I went and got my master's, but that was not good enough. I went and got my doctorate. That was not good enough. You're still a Puerto Rican, and not that's the only reason you get the job. Not because you have any brains, not because of the job that you do, not because of your knowledge, but because you're Puerto Rican. You're a token. So all my life I've been a token. Whether it is going to being appointed to every board in the Reading area, every there is the token, Raquel Yiengst, the Puerto Rican, and so I tried with every fiber of my being to be the kind of person that I was taught to be: respectful, human, treat people with dignity, be helpful. Have I been afforded the same? No. I cannot say that I have been afforded the same treatment. But that has never deterred me from fighting the fight. And when I leave this earth, I will know that I have done everything possible to help every human being that I come in contact with. So, is discrimination here? Yes. Don't tell me that discrimination or we erase discrimination. Even though the Human Relations Commission mission is to eradicate discrimination in the state, discrimination is here. And I believe that one of the biggest um, discriminatory issues in our state and in the United States is the education of our children. We all know that education is the base for anybody, no matter where you come from, no matter how rich, poor, black, white, whatever. And yet, our children are not being educated. And that is the one that makes me the saddest, that I have not been able to make a dent on the education of our children. And I'm not talking Puerto Rican now because everybody has uh, pointed out to me, oh yeah, all she talks is about the education of Puerto Rican children. I am not talking about that. I am talking about every child who deserves the opportunity to be what they want to be. And the only way they want to be what they want to be is they are afforded an equal educational opportunity, which we are not doing. And it's an easy fix. Believe me, it is such an easy fix that I cannot believe that people haven't known how this problem can be solved. But it isn't solved, and I guess it is by design. And I think when I live here, I still live with the sadness in my heart that these children will never be what they need to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing, Commissioner Yanks. We really appreciate your vulnerability and you giving us a historical background on how you got to the commission. We're so fortunate to have you as one of our commissioners. I am pleased to see our executive director online, but before I get to our executive director, we have one, and I don't want to say last, she's certainly not least, Samantha Lopez out of our Philadelphia regional office, also another Latina. And I will hand it over to her and let her share her narrative.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Good.
We can
Okay.
hear you. Yeah.
Good morning.
Thank you. So again, I'm Samantha, the intake supervisor in Philly. My family comes from Puerto Rico. Both my grandmothers came to the States, and then both of my parents were born here. I actually did speak Spanish until I was 7, which is probably a surprise because many of you know I don't speak Spanish. But at 7, my maternal great grandmother passed away. Um, and she only spoke Spanish, so I kind of didn't have a choice but to speak Spanish with her. Um, but after she passed, everyone else kind of just babied me and just spoke English to me. So the Spanish kind of just, drifted away because I didn't practice. Um, and now I'm kind of upset they didn't practice with me because I only speak English now. Um, I struggle with my identity because of others, as others have said before me, Puerto Ricans are a beautiful mixture of African, Spanish, and Taino Native American. Um, but in saying that, I have to come to accept that not only were some of my ancestors raped, um, but some were actually rapists. So I'm proud of my ancestry, I'm proud of my heritage, but it's just something, that I have to come to grips with. Um, the reason I do this work is not only to help others, but to actually show others and be a representative that Latinas can be more than just nannies and housekeepers. And then I just wanted to share y- um, a poem that kind of just sums up why I'm at the commission. I think it summarizes it beautifully. It's titled Mano a Mano by Anthony Orozco. Um, you and I, our hands are very much the same. Their shape, color, and scars may be different, but we carry the same things in our hands. When your fingers interlace with those of another dancer, when you wield the much feared chancla, when you slam down the winning domino, your hands will be my hands. When you ring the bell on the ice cream cart you push up Penn Street, when you make the chimney that fills the air of Franklin Street, your hands will be my hands. When people want you to stop waving foreign flags with pride, but they've told you so many times to go back to your country even though you were born here, your hands will be my hands. When you build your home, build your business, build this country from the ground up, your hands will be my hands. When you are too brown, your accent too thick, when you don't have your papers, when you are shackled and caged, your hands will be my hands. When you resettle here and bring island within you, not just your salsa and sancocho, but the feeling you will have to survive the storm on your own, your hands will be my hands. When the thousands of your dead go uncounted because in some people's eyes you've never counted, except for the hours you pick their mushrooms, clean their homes, cook their food, and raise their children, your hands will be my hands. When you fall, I will reach down to pull you up, dust you off, and shake your hand with dignity and respect. Then I will place my hand on your back to push you forward. And when you cast your first vote as a citizen, when you touch your ancestors through window of tradition, when you fight for what you believe in, when you fight for yourself, when you fight for someone weaker than you, what an honor it is for your hands to also be mine. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
I want a copy of
Thank
that.
you. No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
As we start to conclude, I want to hand it over to our executive director for any closing remarks, CT.
I just want to say good morning to everyone in this virtual beloved community space. I think this was needed. When I had the vision for this, all of the presenters were first and foremost individuals that inspire me. I think it's important for everyone to really, if you haven't heard it before, to really do a deep dive to fundamentally and foundationally understand what servant leadership is. I was hired as the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, but I'm just a servant leader from God. And there's a lot of intellectual manipulation that I engage in. And manipulation is oftentimes seen as a deficit, but is really, from a strengths-based perspective, a highlight. So I learned from Dr. Yiengst. She pours into me. I learned from Director Garcia. He pours into me. What he does in fair housing is just, you can't describe it. My special assistant is a woman of faith. We respect everyone that on this call who are people of faith or non-faith, but you can't do this job the way I do it without having someone pour into you daily with scripture and things of that nature. Taiwan Martinez, she's a person that lives her culture and her cubicle and her heart in the way she is fierce and the way she fights for her people, but all people. And Samantha Lopez. Samantha Lopez is being as she becomes. Samantha Lopez has greatness in her that she is now starting to see. So my words are just words of how I think as a commission we needed this. I received a email this morning from Chairman Bolstein, whose heart is heavy, and all of our hearts are heavy because of what's happening in the Middle East. Humanity is suffering on all sides of the color line, on all sides of the gender line, classism, sexism, racism. Continue to recharge, continue to renew, and continue to reward yourselves for the gains that you made. Well, what gains, ED? I got 100 and something cases. Well, reward yourself because you may have had 150 cases. You may have found that probable cause. You may have got that non-probable cause, but you tried your best and you did it in an ethical way. So my message is just a message of I feel sorry in a good way for my senior management team because I went on vacation, and while I was walking on the beach, God has given me so much vision for members of senior management. So you all are going to have a lot of work. Uh, I don't know what the over and under was with regards to me checking emails, but I did not check one email and I did not send one email. So you can't say that I sent any emails. It's good to be back. I see 55 participants here. I see Renessa. I see the lovely Dr. Yiengst. I see all of you who I'm able to see. I think we should do more of this. I think that we should follow this up with a internal one in which we do where we have people who are Jewish highlight who they are, people who are Muslim highlight who they are, people who are, I know in the past we've done LGBTQ plus pride events, but we want to create an environment at PHRC where there are some of us who still may be afraid to come out, even though we work at the PHRC, and we should be able to have an event virtually that we can talk about that. And so I know not to hold this up, but Stacy Waters is reaching out to someone that we met at the EEOC conference, Jonathan Siegel, who's with Dwayne Morris Law Firm. He's going to be doing a virtual lunch and learn for us talking about anti-Semitism. There's a lot of work that we're going to be doing to address anti-Semitism virtually, to address all these things. It's good to see so many wonderful. Oh, there's our chairman. Want to stop now and maybe have our chairman chime in for some words. But once again, just thank you for supporting this vision. To our director of communications for putting this together, and for those individuals that we picked to give your reflections. I'm glad it's recorded. I'll be able to look at it and we'll be able to also share it. But just continue the great work that we're doing here at the PHRC, and learn so much for the time I was here that I didn't know about all of you who produced these rich and enriching narratives. So thank you, Special Assistant Rojas, for just giving me a few moments to just share my brief reflections. Let's turn it over to Chairman Bolstein.
Thanks, ED. I just want to thank everybody who shared their stories today. Incredible stories. I think that's the thing that makes PHRC so unique, is our willingness to share those stories with the people who we work with. We're all committed to the same thing, which is ending discrimination. All of our backgrounds are such that all of our families have experienced discrimination. We know what it is. We know what it feels like. We want it to stop. So again, I come away from all of these webinars with mixed emotions about the trauma of the past and what we're trying to accomplish. So again, I think all of these stories require us to recommit ourselves to doing everything that we can to end discrimination against everyone. As the chairman, as the ED said, I have a heavy heart. I have a big part of my family tree. When my ancestors left Europe, some came to America, some are in Israel. and I see what's going on. I check the newspapers every day for the names of the people who've been murdered or taken hostage just to see if they're part of my family tree, and it's very sad. But we have to persevere every day, all of us. Um, and there's a lot of evil in the world, and we face it and we confront it and we do our part. So thank you to everyone at PHRC for everything that you do on a daily basis, for remembering what it feels like to be discriminated against and how we need to stop it. So thank you to everyone for sharing their stories today. I turn it back over to the ED.
I turn it back over to the special assistant.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day after a long weekend, a holiday that we observed yesterday. Pretty sure you all have emails to get to, cases to continue to investigate. Thank you all for your time. My thoughts, my prayers, honestly, are with all of the people in Israel and everything that's going on there. And I pray that you all have a productive day today. All right.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.